Welcome to the channel, and this is another part of my decade build series in which every decade I do a build or 2 builds over 2 weeks in that era, and I tell you a little bit about the era and about the build that I'm building. So last week I did a 1940s Cape Cod vacation home, and today I'm going to be doing a 1940s Colonial Cottage, so more family oriented, more budget friendly in a way. And yeah, at this time of when I'm building this house, I'm kind of imagining that it's late 40s, so post-war, World War II that is, in which suburbs were becoming really, really popular in the US and abroad. During this time, after World War II, veterans of the war wanted to come back and kind of settle down and have a normal life, and that's kind of what I was envisioning for this house, kind of like a post-war late 40s kind of moving along into the 50s type of house. So as I do in every decade build, I want to show you guys some of the photos that I referenced for this house. So on the left is an example of a house in the 40s that you would find in a suburb. Women were largely expected to become housewives when the men came back from the war. These are some beautiful women in what was the fashion of the day. Dresses were no longer at the knee. It was more fashionable to be a T-length, which is to the calf. And this is an example of a typical 1940s kitchen. Yeah, that laminate though. And some washing machines in the back, which were starting to become more available and popular. This is an example of one of the first TVs that was kind of around at that time. But World War II officially ended on September 2nd, 1945. However, the second Red Scare, basically an overall uneasiness and fear of communism, occurred shortly after, which was from 1947 to 1957, and it was really known as McCarthyism after its biggest supporter, Senator Joseph McCarthy. And it coincided with increasingly heightened fear of the communist espionage to Soviet Eastern Europe, the Berlin blockade, the Chinese Civil War, and the confessions of spying for Soviet Union given by several high-ranking U.S. officials and the Korean War. So there was kind of an overall uneasiness about communism and all that. So in March 1947, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9835, creating the Federal Employees Loyalty Program, establishing political loyalty review boards who determined the Americanism of federal government employees and recommended termination of those people who had confessed to spying for the Soviet Union, as well as some suspected of being un-American. And it also was the template for several state legislatures, loyalty acts basically, such as California's Levering Act, the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and the committees of Senator Joseph McCarthy, which conducted character investigations of, quote, American communists, actual and suspected, and their roles in real and imaginary espionage, propaganda, and subversion favoring the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, it did more harm than it did good, and many people's careers were tarnished by that suspicion or fear. So as far as the suburbs go, suburban areas in the US and in other parts of the world exploded during post-World War II economic expansions. So as I said before, returning veterans wanted to just have a normal life and have a family and kind of move on from the terrors that war kind of brings. Levittown developed as a major prototype of mass-producing housing, and Levittown, formerly Island Trees, is kind of a hamlet and a census-designated place in the town of Hempstead in Long Island, New York. Levittown is halfway between the villages of Hempstead and Farmingdale, if you know where that is. Levittown gets its name from its builder, the firm of Levitt and Sons, Inc., founded by Abraham Levitt on August 2nd, 1929, which built the district as kind of a planned community between 1947 and 1951. His sons, William and Alfred, served as the company's president and chief architect and planner, respectively. Levittown was the first truly mass-produced suburb and is widely regarded as the kind of like an archetype for post-war suburbs throughout the country. William Levitt, who assumed control of Levitt & Sons in 1954, is considered the father of modern suburbia in the United States. Very little housing was built during the Great Depression and the war, except for emergency places and quarters near war industries. Overcrowded and inadequate apartments were more of the common housing that people would live in during this time. Some suburbs had developed around large cities where there was rail transportation to jobs downtown. However, the real growth in suburbia depended on the availability of automobiles, highways, and inexpensive housing. The population had grown, and the stock of family savings had kind of accumulated, and the money for down payments, cars, and appliances kind of came with that. The product was a huge housing boom during this time, for Americans especially. And veterans actually had a loan, or they were able to kind of finance for their homes because they were veterans. So that was kind of a big incentive for people. So as you can see in the back of this kitchen, I have kind of like a little washroom or a pantry area. And that was very heavily inspired by that picture that I showed you guys before. The first washer was developed by General Electric in 1947, and General Electric also invented the first washer and dryer combination unit in 1954. So during this time, they only had washers, and then they would dry their clothes on a clothesline until the mid-50s. Also during this time, which I'll show you in a little bit how I did the TV, but early TV was developed by RCA, and they televised a speech by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1939, which made him the first U.S. president to appear on TV. It was, however, really experimental and kind of expensive, so not a lot of people had TVs, but most everyone had radios at this time. It remained pretty expensive up until 1946. There were only about 6,000 TV sets in the US, but after the war, it grew exponentially. There was so many TVs, nearly everyone had one, whether small or big, and so the TVs that we know of today really came from the TVs that happened in the late 1940s, which is where I kind of peg this house to be. And of course I had to put the decorative plates on top of the cabinets because for some reason women during this time really loved to decorate with china and platters and things like that. The Z3 was the world's first working programmable, fully automatic computing machine. And so that was kind of like the very beginnings of computers. The first test of technology for an atomic weapon happened during this time as part of the Manhattan Project. Sound barrier was also broken during this time in 1947, and the transistor was invented also in 1947. But there were so many like technological advances that happened during this time. There were things like radar, ballistic missiles, jet aircraft, the Jeep, commercial television, the Slinky, microwave ovens, Velcro, Tupperware, and the Frisbee, just to name off a few. Although the 1940s was particularly dominated by World War II, a lot of industries really thrived during this time, especially the film industry, which is considered the golden age of Hollywood around the 30s and 40s. And they were a variety of subjects, mostly war-related because that's just how it was at the time. Film noir, like detective, crime-related movies, became really popular. And it's kind of like a crime drama, and it's very dark, and it has like moody lighting. This type of movie became really popular during this time as well. Films such as The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep are considered classics and helped launch the careers of actors like Humphrey Bogart, who went on to become, I think, particularly famous because of Casablanca, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And yeah, so now on to the build. So right now I'm doing the dining room, and I really love how the dining room came out. I think it's very particular to this time period. And if you download this house, I hope that you replace all the laminate because that's just how it was. People went crazy over laminate. And I guess because it's easy to clean and it's cheaper to have instead of wood in the house or tile. So yeah. So this room here, I was thinking could be the son's room, and I figured that the son would have come back from war, and so he has like letters maybe from his sweetheart, which you'll see in a little bit. I can't wait, you guys, for the bowling pack to come out, because next week we'll be starting on the 50s, and I think a lot of those items will be particularly handy, and I'm really excited for that. So for the living room, I kind of had a hard time with the TV because it wasn't really looking how I saw it in the pictures. So I just used this tiny little display table that's technically not a, it's not really like an accent table. It's more for displays. I think it came with Get to Work, but I thought it looked pretty accurate to how most TVs looked at this time. And I saw this other picture where it had like these shelving units right next to the TV. And unfortunately, we don't have rounded accent tables. I mean, I guess I could have used the ones that came with the toddler update, but I don't know. It just didn't seem right to me, so I just used these. And I also end up changing the seating because I felt like it just wasn't working as well as I thought, because I really wanted to add a fireplace in here, so I rearranged the furniture, and I found some furniture to use that I think was more appropriate for this time period. And another thing I noticed was in some 1940s houses, they used curtains instead of doors to kind of section off areas of the house. And so that's why I kind of used a curtain there to go into the living room and kind of section it off. So yeah, I really like how it looked though. I think it looks pretty accurate to what I've seen. So at this point I thought it might be kind of cool to have kind of a cabinet system since that was becoming more popular at this time, just to house books and media and things like that. So I kind of encased the bookshelf and the sofa in this kind of like L-shaped cabinet system. I thought it worked pretty well. Just had to move everything a little bit over so it made sense. But yeah, pretty happy with it. So going back to this part of the house, this is kind of the guest bathroom, or the bathroom that the son would use. And I saw this picture of a red and blue bathroom and I was like, I have to do this. So luckily there was a nice red tile or laminate that really worked for this. I wanted to put some type of like shelving or display area behind the tub, but I think it didn't really look right. Neither did this. So I think I just used these shelves behind it, and that seemed to work pretty well. I just wish that it didn't glitch so much. And then I wanted to do kind of the same thing with the sink, with the shelf kind of across it, but it didn't really look right either, so just decided against it. What would have made this so perfect is if we had glass panels that were kind of frosted. You know, the really blocky glass walls that are just like cubes of glass, but they're frosted. Oh, that would have been so perfect in that bathroom. Decided to switch around his bed because I wanted to fit a dresser in here, and this was the best way I figured that the layout of the room would work. I wish we had more pinup style type artwork, but unfortunately we do not. So I ended up using the Marilyn Monroe inspired artwork that came with the Vintage Glamour pack. And it seemed appropriate to me because Marilyn Monroe actually started her career as a pinup girl, and the height of her career was probably in the 50s, early 60s. And but she was still a pinup girl, so I kind of wanted to have something like that in his room, just placing a little folded shirts that maybe his mom folded for him on his bed. And there she is. I really like how the red of her lipstick kind of ties in with the red in the bed. And yeah, and then on the other side I have a picture of a plane, because maybe he was an Air Force pilot or something like that in the war. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. This, of course, I was doing the garage, and garages were very popular to add to houses during this time. Mostly single-car garages unless you were rich and you could afford a 2-car garage. But yeah, because nearly everyone at this point had a car, so a lot of people wanted kind of a garage to house it in. And now we're going upstairs, and it's pretty simple. I did a child's room up here, as well as a master bedroom of sorts. I kind of struggled with what bed to use in a way, because none of them really look like what they used in the 40s. So I ended up going with this bed here because it seemed the most fancy and fluffy out of all the beds. Another thing that's probably worth mentioning is if you do want to download this house, I noticed while I was doing the machinima for the end that the Sims were kind of going around the house just to go to the backyard when I have several ways to get there. But turns out that the wind chimes I put above the door are actually prohibiting the Sims to go to the backyard easily. So if you do download this house, you'll have to kind of either move the wind chimes or take it out completely so it will work. But anyways, guys, I'm just going to be doing the little girls' room and a little bit of the outside, but we're pretty much done here, and I'm so excited for next week. I cannot wait to show you because I've already started building my 1950s home for next week, so just waiting on that bowling pack. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!